rattling of my old Toyota echoed through the empty night as I drove down the forgotten stretch of road. The headlights cut weakly through the darkness, illuminating nothing but cracked asphalt and the occasional withered weed. It was exactly 10:30 p.m. when I pulled into the empty parking lot of the grocery store. The building stood alone against the vast darkness, a solitary box of flickering fluorescent light. Across from it lay the abandoned highway, closed off decades ago, and now choked with weeds and whispered rumors. They said there had been a massacre there, some ritual killing that the locals pretended to forget but never really did. The stories varied, but they all ended the same way, with blood seeping into the asphalt and souls trapped in the night air. I killed the engine and sat for a moment, studying the store through my windshield. The neon sign above the entrance flickered erratically, casting strange, pulsating shadows. Grocery store, it read, but the first part was obscured by symbols I couldn't make out, jagged, angular shapes that made my eyes water when I tried to focus on them too long. The longer I stared, the more they seemed to shift and writhe, as if alive and aware of my attention. The windows were strange too. They reflected nothing, not even my car's headlights. It was as if the glass absorbed light rather than bounced it back. A perfect void. This place is a dump, I muttered to myself. But $50 an hour, I'd sweep floors in hell to keep Sean breathing. My brother's face flashed in my mind, pale against the hospital sheets, tubes snaking from his arms, his breath a shallow wheeze that seemed to grow fainter each day. The medical bills were piling up faster than I could count them, a mountain of debt that threatened to bury us both. When I'd seen the job listing Nightshift, $50 an hour, no questions asked, it had seemed like a miracle. Now, staring at the store's light-swallowing windows, I wasn't so sure. I checked my phone one last time. A text from Mrs. Winters, our elderly neighbor who was sitting with Sean tonight. He's sleeping peacefully. Don't worry. But worry was all I did these days. I stepped out of the car, and the night air hit me like a physical wall, cold and heavy, with a strange smell I couldn't place. Something like ozone, mixed with something older and more primal. The kind of smell that clings to abandoned places where bad things have happened. As I approached the entrance, the store's lights seemed to pulse faintly, like a heartbeat. I paused, watching them flicker in a rhythm that felt deliberate. Just a faulty electrical system, I told myself. Nothing weird about that in a place this old. The automatic doors slid open with a hiss that sounded too much like a sigh of relief. Inside, the store was unnervingly pristine. The tiles gleamed under harsh fluorescent lighting, each aisle perfectly organized, cans and boxes stacked with surgical precision. A faint hum came from the coolers along the back wall, steady and monotonous. Behind the counter stood a man tall and impossibly thin, with skin that seemed stretched too tight over his bones. His eyes were dark pools that didn't reflect the overhead lights, fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Mr. Grimm?" I asked, my voice sounding too loud in the empty store. He nodded once, the movement stiff and mechanical. "Alex, you're precisely on time." I hadn't told him my name in the email exchange, but I brushed it off. Small town. Maybe he knew Sean or had heard about our situation. "Yes, sir. I'm ready to start." Mr. Grimm's face remained expressionless as he studied me, his gaze seeming to penetrate beyond my skin to something deeper. "You're here for your brother, yes? Are you certain you can handle the night?" The way he said night sent a chill down my spine, like it was something alive and hungry. Why does he keep saying night like it's a death sentence, I thought. Just stock shelves, ring up customers, easy money. I nodded, swallowing the knot in my stomach. "Yes, sir, I can handle it." His smile widened then, revealing too many teeth, all perfectly white and straight. "Good. The night is unforgiving to those who aren't prepared." He gestured for me to follow him behind the counter. There was a small office there, with a desk and a security monitor showing grainy feeds of the empty aisles. He pointed to a chair, and I sat. "The job is simple," he said, his voice a monotone that somehow made me more uneasy than if he'd been shouting. "You will maintain the store. You will assist customers. You will follow the rules." "Rules?" I echoed. Mr. Grimm reached into a drawer and pulled out a crumpled, yellowed piece of paper. Its edges were brittle, as if it had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times. He handed it to me with long, bony fingers that felt ice cold when they brushed against mine. "Read this before 12:12 a.m. Follow it, the store's rules, or you'll be claimed." I took the paper, confused by his phrasing. Claimed? But Mr. Grimm had already turned away, gathering his coat from a hook on the wall. "I must leave now. The night shift is yours alone." "Wait," I said, standing up too quickly. "Don't I need training or something? A tour?" He paused at the door, looking back at me with those empty eyes. "The paper contains all you need to know. Do not disappoint the store, Alex." And then he was gone, the door slamming shut behind him with a finality that made my heart skip. I was alone. 12:12? Weird time, I thought. Probably some stupid corporate thing. Whatever, I just need to get through tonight. I stuffed the paper into my pocket, assuming it was just some quirky employee handbook. Every place had its rules, right? Nothing to worry about. The silence pressed in around me, broken only by the hum of the coolers and the occasional tick from the large clock above the entrance. 10:45 p.m., 7 hours to go. I decided to familiarize myself with the layout. The store was larger than it had appeared from outside, with 12 aisles of products ranging from canned goods to household items. Everything was meticulously organized, not a single item out of place. It was almost too perfect, like a display in a museum rather than a functioning grocery store. At the back, I found a small break room with a sink, microwave, and a table with 2 chairs. Next to it was a bathroom marked "Employees Only." I pushed the door open and flicked on the light. A single bulb illuminated a cramped space with a toilet, sink, and a mirror that looked cloudy, as if it had been wiped with a dirty cloth. I splashed some cold water on my face, trying to shake off the unease that had settled over me since I'd arrived. When I looked up at the mirror, for a split second, I thought I saw someone standing behind me, a dark shape, just at the edge of my vision. I whirled around, heart pounding, but the bathroom was empty. "Get a grip, Alex," I muttered to myself. "It's just a grocery store." Back in the main area, I decided to check the inventory, just to keep busy. I grabbed a clipboard from behind the counter and started down aisle 1, noting the stock levels of each item. As I reached the middle of aisle 3, the lights pulsed again, dimming for a moment, before brightening to an almost painful intensity. The air seemed to thicken, and that strange smell ozone and decay grew stronger. A sound caught my attention, a soft scraping noise from the next aisle over. I froze, listening. It came again, like something being dragged across the floor. Slowly, I moved to the end of the aisle and peered around the corner. A single can of soup rolled across the floor, stopping abruptly at my feet. I stared at it, then looked up and down the aisle. Empty. No one who could have knocked it off the shelf. I bent down and picked up the can. It felt heavier than it should have, like it was filled with lead instead of soup. The label showed a smiling family gathered around a table, but their faces seemed distorted somehow, their smiles too wide, their eyes too dark. I placed it back on the shelf, my hand lingering on the cool metal for a moment. As I pulled away, I could have sworn I felt it vibrate slightly, like something inside was moving. Back at the counter, I checked the clock again. 11:15 p.m. Time was crawling by. I pulled out my phone to text Mrs. Winters, but there was no signal. The screen showed only a single message. No service. Great. Cut off from the world in this creepy store. Just what I needed. I remembered the paper in my pocket and pulled it out. thinking I might as well read the rules now. But as I started to unfold it, the store's front door jingled. I looked up, startled. There hadn't been a car in the parking lot when I arrived, and I hadn't heard one pull up. But there in the doorway stood a figure tall and thin, wrapped in shadows, despite the bright lights of the store. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small in the vast space. "Can I help you?" The figure didn't respond, just stood there, swaying slightly as if caught in a breeze I couldn't feel. I moved out from behind the counter, approaching cautiously. "Sir? Ma'am? Are you okay?" As I got closer, the figure seemed to recede, like a shadow stretching away from light, and then, between one blink and the next, it was gone. The door hadn't opened again. The figure had simply vanished. I stood there, heart hammering in my chest, staring at the empty space where it had been. Had I imagined it? Was my mind playing tricks on me already? The clock above the door ticked loudly, drawing my attention. 11:30 p.m. Half an hour gone, 6.5 to go. I returned to the counter, my hands shaking slightly as I unfolded the paper Mr. Grimm had given me. The rules, he'd called them. I needed to know what I was dealing with here. But before I could read the first line, a loud crash came from aisle 6. I jumped, the paper fluttering from my hands to the floor. "Hello?" I called out again, louder this time. "Is someone there?" Silence answered me, heavy and expectant. I should check it out, I thought. That's my job, right? To maintain the store. But something held me back, a primal fear that whispered, "Don't go, don't look, don't see." I bent down to retrieve the fallen paper, and as I straightened up, I caught movement in my peripheral vision, something dark and fast, darting between aisles. "This is ridiculous," I muttered, trying to steady my nerves. "It's just a grocery store, nothing weird about it." But even as I said the words, I knew they were a lie. Everything about this place was wrong. The 2 clean floors, the perfect shelves, the lights that pulsed like a living thing, the windows that reflected nothing. I looked down at the paper in my hands, the yellowed edges crumbling slightly under my fingers. Whatever was written here, I had a feeling it wasn't just about keeping the floors mopped and the shelves stocked. The crash came again, louder this time, followed by a sound like laughter, high and childlike, but with an edge that made the hair on my arms stand up. I had to check it out. I couldn't just stand here all night, jumping at shadows. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out from behind the counter and headed toward aisle 6, the paper still clutched in my hand. Whatever was happening in this store, I was about to find out. The night had only just begun. I stood behind the counter, alone in the oppressive silence of Death's Market. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a monotonous drone that seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. It was exactly 11:30 p.m., 7 more hours to go. The yellowed paper Mr. Grimm had given me felt heavy in my pocket, like it carried more weight than just ink and cellulose. I pulled it out, my fingers trembling slightly as I unfolded it. The edges crumbled a bit, releasing a musty scent that reminded me of old library books and forgotten attics. The first 3 rules were written in neat, precise handwriting. Keep the store tidy at all times. Assist every customer within 1 minute of their arrival. Smile at all customers, even if they don't look at you. Standard retail stuff, nothing unusual there. But as my eyes moved down the page, the handwriting changed, becoming more frantic, the letters shaky and uneven, as if written by someone in a hurry or afraid. If a customer asks for the black door, say it's locked and walk away. Do not look back. If you hear laughter from aisle 9, cover your ears and count to 10 before moving. At 2:22 a.m., stand still for exactly 1 minute. Do not move, no matter what touches you. If a customer offers a coin with a hole in it, take it and burn it in the break room sink. Do not keep it. If the mirrors in the bathroom show someone behind you, close your eyes and leave. I read the rules twice, my stomach tightening with each word. The last two rules were smeared, as if someone had spilled water on them. I could only make out fragments: never touch, key, and 5 a.m., escape, or... This is a sick joke, right? Some hazing for the new guy? But why does my skin crawl reading this? I folded the paper carefully and slipped it back into my pocket. The store seemed to watch me, waiting for a reaction. The silence pressed against my ears, broken only by the hum of the coolers and the occasional tick of the large clock above the entrance. To keep myself busy, I decided to check the inventory. I grabbed a clipboard from behind the counter and started down aisle 1, noting the stock levels of each item. Everything was perfectly arranged, not a single can or box out of place. It was almost too perfect, like a display rather than a functioning store. As I reached aisle 6, I noticed something odd about the cereal boxes. They were arranged by color rather than brand or type A rainbow progression from red to violet. Who would do that? It wasn't practical for customers, but it was strangely beautiful, in an obsessive sort of way. The clock ticked loudly, drawing my attention. 12:04 a.m. I'd been inventorying for over half an hour, and it felt like minutes. Time moved differently here, stretching and contracting like a living thing. Just as I turned back to my clipboard, the front door jingled. My heart jumped into my throat. I hadn't heard a car pull up, and I was certain the parking lot had been empty when I arrived. But rule number 2 was clear: assist every customer within 1 minute. I set down the clipboard and hurried to the front. A man stood just inside the entrance, water dripping from his stained trench coat onto the pristine floor. His face was obscured by a hood, but I could see his chin pale and stubbled. He didn't move, just stood there, swaying slightly as if caught in a breeze I couldn't feel. "Can I help you?" I called out, my voice sounding small in the vast space. The man's head turned toward me, movement too fluid, too smooth. "The black door," he said, his voice a rasp that seemed to scrape against my eardrums. "I need to get through the black door." Rule 4 flashed in my mind. My mouth went dry. "It's locked," I stammered, pointing to the exit. "You'll have to leave." The man's head twitched, an unnatural jerky movement. A low growl escaped him, rising from deep in his chest. It didn't sound human. He took a step toward me, then another, his movement stiff and mechanical. I backed away, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Sir, please leave." The man stopped, his head tilting at an impossible angle. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out. The door slammed shut behind him with a finality that made me flinch. The temperature in the store plummeted. I could see my breath fogging in front of me, despite the fact that it was May. The coolers hummed louder, almost angry. Okay, that guy was on something. No way this place is haunted. Get a grip, Alex. But even as I tried to rationalize what had just happened, I knew deep down that this wasn't normal. That man, if he was a man, hadn't been drunk or high. He'd been something else entirely. I returned to my inventory, trying to steady my nerves. The store felt different now, more awake somehow. The lights seemed to pulse with a subtle rhythm, like a heartbeat. The air felt thicker, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. As I moved through aisle 6, checking the cereal boxes, my hand brushed against something wedged between 2 boxes of cornflakes. I pulled it out, a small, tarnished key. It was warm to the touch, almost hot, and etched with the same strange symbols I'd seen on the store's sign. I turned it over in my palm, studying the intricate patterns. They seemed to shift and move as I looked at them, forming shapes that hurt my eyes. Despite the warmth of the key, a chill ran down my spine. Something about it felt wrong, dangerous even. But I pocketed it anyway, telling myself it might be important later. The moment the key slipped into my pocket, the lights flickered, plunging the store into darkness for a split second before blazing back to life, brighter than before. And then I heard it. A child's giggle, high and sweet, echoing from aisle 9. Rule 5. If you hear laughter from aisle 9, cover your ears and count to 10 before moving. I clapped my hands over my ears, squeezing my eyes shut as I counted. 1, 2, 3. The laughter grew louder, closer, as if the child was running toward me. 4, 5, 6. Something cold brushed against my neck, like fingers made of ice. 7, 8, 9. The laughter stopped abruptly. 10. I opened my eyes, lowering my hands slowly. The store was silent again, but the air felt different, heavier, charged with something I couldn't name. I reached up to touch my neck, half expecting to find marks where I'd felt the cold touch. There was nothing, but my skin tingled where the invisible fingers had brushed. What the hell was that? This key. It's bad news, but maybe it's worth something? The key in my pocket seemed to pulse, a gentle vibration against my thigh. I reached down to touch it through the fabric of my jeans, and for a moment, I could have sworn I heard it whisper my name. Alex ... Soft, barely audible, but unmistakably there. I jerked my hand away, heart racing. This was insane. Keys don't whisper. Stores don't breathe. Customers don't growl. Yet here I was, experiencing all three. I needed to clear my head. I headed for the bathroom, pushing open the door marked "Employees Only." The fluorescent light flickered on automatically, revealing a small, clean space with a toilet, sink, and mirror. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to shock some sense into myself. When I looked up at the mirror, I froze. My reflection stared back at me, but behind it stood a figure tall and thin, its face a blur of shadow. I blinked, and it was gone, but I knew what I'd seen. Rule 8. If the mirrors in the bathroom show someone behind you, close your eyes and leave. I squeezed my eyes shut and backed out of the bathroom, not opening them until I was safely in the store again. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic rhythm that matched the pulsing of the lights overhead. This was real, all of it. The rules weren't a joke or a hazing ritual. They were a survival guide. I pulled out the paper again, reading through the rules more carefully this time. The smudged parts at the bottom bothered me. What was I not supposed to touch? The key? And what happened at 5 a.m.? Escape or what? The store seemed to watch me, waiting. The key in my pocket grew warmer, almost burning against my leg. I could feel it calling to me, urging me to find its lock, to discover what secrets it might unlock. But something told me that would be a mistake, a deadly one. I glanced at the clock. 1:15 a.m. I'd been here for nearly 3 hours, though it felt like days. The night stretched ahead, long and uncertain, and I had a feeling it was only going to get worse. Outside, the darkness pressed against the windows like a living thing, hungry and patient. Inside, the store hummed with malevolent energy, its lights pulsing in rhythm with my racing heart. I was trapped between two worlds, the normal one I'd left behind, and this nightmare realm I'd stumbled into. And somewhere in between was the truth about Death's Market. The key vibrated in my pocket again, whispering my name. Alex ... I tried to ignore it, focusing instead on the inventory clipboard, but the letters swam before my eyes, rearranging themselves into those same strange symbols from the sign and the key. I blinked, and they returned to normal. But the message was clear. This place was getting to me. As I moved through the aisles, I noticed other changes. The mirrors scattered throughout the store, small ones in the cosmetics section, larger ones by the clothing rack, never showed my reflection correctly. Sometimes my face was distorted, features stretched and twisted. Other times, it wasn't my face at all, but someone else's, someone with hollow eyes and a too wide smile. The key grew hotter in my pocket, almost painfully so. I considered throwing it away, but something stopped me. It felt important, like it was part of the puzzle I needed to solve to survive this night. At 1:25 a.m., I heard the door jingle again. I tensed, remembering the man in the trench coat. But when I looked up, there was no one there. The door swung gently on its hinges, as if someone had just passed through. But the store was empty. Or was it? From the corner of my eye, I caught movement in aisle 3, a flash of white, like a dress or a nightgown. I turned, but there was nothing there, just perfectly arranged cans and boxes, undisturbed. The key whispered again, louder this time. "Alex, find me. Unlock me." I pressed my hands over my ears, but the voice was inside my head now, impossible to block out. The store seemed to be closing in around me, the walls pulsing like a heartbeat, the lights dimming and brightening in rhythm. I needed air. I headed for the front door, but as I reached for the handle, I remembered Rule 9 or what I could make out of it. Never touch key. Was I not supposed to leave? Was that what it meant? The door handle felt ice cold under my fingers, sending a shock up my arm. I pulled my hand back, staring at the exit. Beyond it lay darkness, but at least it was a darkness I understood. In here, the darkness had teeth. I turned away from the door, resigned to seeing this night through. The rules were my only guide, my only protection against whatever lurked in this place. I would follow them to the letter, no matter how strange or frightening they seemed. The key in my pocket had gone silent, but I could still feel its warmth, its presence. It was waiting, patient as the darkness outside, waiting for me to give in to curiosity, to seek out its lock and turn it. But I wouldn't. Not yet. Not until I understood more about this place, about the rules, about the strange symbols that hurt my eyes to look at. The clock ticked loudly, marking the passage of time in this timeless place. 1:30 a.m. The night was still young, and Death's Market had only begun to reveal its secrets. I squared my shoulders and continued my inventory, clipboard in hand, rules in pocket, key burning against my thigh. Whatever this place was, whatever it wanted from me, I would face it head on. For Sean. Always for Sean. The store watched, and waited, and breathed around me. And somewhere in the darkness, something laughed, a sound like breaking glass and tearing paper. A sound that promised the night was far from over, and it was right. The worst was yet to come. The store had changed. What had once been merely unsettling now pulsed with malevolence, like a predator that no longer needed to hide its nature. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed a discordant melody, rising and falling in pitch, as if communicating in some alien language. It was 1:30 a.m., and I was trapped in Death's Market with no way out. I leaned against the counter, my breathing shallow, the key burning a hole in my pocket. The rules had proven themselves real, horrifyingly, undeniably real. And I still had hours to go before dawn. The first real terror came at exactly 2 a.m. The door jingled, and I looked up to see a woman gliding, not walking, but gliding toward the produce section. Her movements were too fluid, as if she were floating just above the floor. I approached her, remembering rule number 2, assist every customer within 1 minute. "Can I help you find anything?" My voice sounded thin and reedy in the vast emptiness of the store. She turned slowly, and I had to fight the urge to scream. Where her eyes should have been were smooth, unbroken expanses of skin. No scars, no indication that eyes had ever existed there, just blank flesh. Yet somehow, I knew she was looking at me. "An apple," she said, her voice like dry leaves rustling. "Just one." I led her to the produce section, my legs trembling beneath me. She selected a single red apple, turning it over in her pale hands as if searching for imperfections. At the register, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a coin tarnished silver with a perfect hole through its center. Rule 7 flashed in my mind. If a customer offers a coin with a hole in it, take it and burn it in the break room sink. Do not keep it. I took the coin with shaking fingers. It was ice cold, despite having been in her pocket. "I'll get your change," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "No need." Her lipless mouth stretched into what might have been a smile. "It's a gift." She took her apple and left, the door closing behind her with a finality that made my heart sink. I stood frozen for a moment, the coin burning cold in my palm, before rushing to the break room. The sink was old porcelain, stained with years of use. I dropped the coin into it and fumbled for the matches Mr. Grimm had left in a drawer. The coin seemed to resist the flame at first, but then caught with a whoosh, burning with an unnatural blue fire. The sink gurgled as if swallowing, and the flames disappeared, leaving no trace of the coin. I stumbled back to the front, checking the time. 2:21 a.m. Rule 6. At 2:22 a.m., stand still for exactly 1 minute. Do not move, no matter what touches you. I positioned myself in the center of aisle 3, away from shelves I might accidentally brush against. As the clock ticked over to 2:22, I froze, barely daring to breathe. For the first 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the temperature plummeted. My breath fogged in front of me, and the lights dimmed to a sickly yellow glow. Something moved in the periphery of my vision, a dark shape, undulating like smoke. It circled me slowly, a presence more than a form. I could feel its attention, its curiosity. A cold pressure brushed against my arm, like fingers made of ice, leaving a burning sensation in its wake. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to move, to escape. But I remembered the rule. Do not move, no matter what touches you. The presence moved closer, its cold breath on the back of my neck. I could hear it now, a soft, wet sound, like something breathing through fluid. The burning on my arm intensified, and I bit my lip to keep from crying out. The clock ticked over to 2:23, and the presence vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. The lights brightened, and warmth returned to the air. I looked down at my arm to see a faint red mark where the cold had touched me. 5 fingerprints, perfectly spaced, as if someone had gripped me with a freezing hand. This isn't a job. This is a nightmare. I should run, but Sean, I can't fail him. I needed the bathroom needed to splash cold water on my face, to ground myself in something normal. I pushed open the door marked "Employees Only" and flicked on the light. The mirror above the sink was cloudy, spotted with age. I ran the water, cupping my hands beneath the flow. When I straightened and looked in the mirror, I froze. Behind my reflection stood a figure me, but not me. It had my face, my clothes, but its eyes were hollow, empty sockets that seemed to go on forever. It smiled, a terrible stretching of lips that revealed too many teeth. Rule 8. If the mirrors in the bathroom show someone behind you, close your eyes and leave. I squeezed my eyes shut and backed out of the bathroom, not opening them until I was safely in the store again. My heart hammered in my chest, and sweat beaded on my forehead, despite the chill in the air. The store was doing things to me. In the reflection of a metal napkin dispenser, I caught a glimpse of my hands, but they weren't hands anymore. They were claws, long and curved and deadly. I blinked, and they were normal again. But the image lingered in my mind, a promise of what might be coming. At 3:15 a.m., as I was straightening products in aisle 12, my hand brushed against something wedged behind the freezer, a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. I pulled it out, unfolding it carefully. The handwriting was frantic, the letters pressed deeply into the paper as if the writer had been desperate to make their mark. "This is Death's Market," it read. The symbols spell damnation. After midnight, the customers are spirits victims of the highway slaughter 50 years ago. The store feeds on despair. It chose you because of your brother. It'll take his soul by 5 a.m. unless you escape. The key unlocks the truth, but don't use it. Run now. It was signed simply, Elias. The note went on to describe a ritual murder on the highway decades ago, a sacrifice that had bound the spirits to this place, creating a nexus of suffering that the store fed upon. The job offer had never been about employment. It had been a trap, baited with exactly what I needed most: money for Sean. My heart sank as the truth settled over me like a shroud. This wasn't just a haunted building, it was a predator, and I had walked willingly into its jaws. Spirits? A curse? This can't be real, but those customers, that key, what have I walked into? The key in my pocket grew hotter, almost burning through the fabric of my jeans. It seemed to pulse with a life of its own, urging me to use it, to find its lock and turn it. I reached down, touching it through the fabric, and a whisper filled my mind. Not words, exactly, but impressions. A door, a truth, a way out. I found myself moving toward the stockroom, drawn by a compulsion I couldn't resist. The key pulled me forward, growing hotter with each step. In the back of the stockroom, partially hidden behind a stack of boxes, was a door I hadn't noticed before. It was old wood, darkened with age, and bore no markings except for a small tarnished keyhole. The key in my pocket burned fiercer, and I could hear faint sounds coming from behind the door: whispers, screams, pleas for help. The keyhole seemed to match the key perfectly, as if they had been made for each other. Elias's warning echoed in my mind. The key unlocks the truth, but don't use it. But the compulsion was almost overwhelming, a need that clawed at my insides. My hand moved toward my pocket, fingers closing around the burning metal. With a supreme effort of will, I pulled my hand away and backed up, putting distance between myself and the door. The key seemed to pulse angrily in my pocket, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. That door, it's calling me. But Elias said don't. I can't risk it. Not yet. I retreated to the front of the store, trying to focus on anything but the key and the door. But the store itself seemed to be changing more rapidly now, as if angered by my resistance. The walls pulsed visibly, like a heartbeat, and the lights flickered in patterns that hurt my eyes. The air smelled of ozone and decay, and shadows moved in the corners of my vision, darting just out of sight when I turned to look. In the reflection of a spoon, I caught another glimpse of my transformation. My hands were claws again, and my face was elongating, features shifting into something inhuman. I dropped the spoon with a clatter, and when I looked at my hands directly, they were normal. But the image stayed with me, a promise of what was coming. The store was changing me, just as it had changed Elias before me, and who knew how many others. It was a slow transformation, a corruption that started in the reflections and worked its way outward. By the time it reached my physical form, it would be too late. I had to escape before 5 a.m. That much was clear from both the smudged rule and Elias's note. But how? The doors wouldn't open. I'd already tried. And even if they did, what about Sean? The note had said the store would take his soul by 5 a.m. unless I escaped. But if I escaped, would that save him or doom him? The key burned hotter in my pocket, as if sensing my desperation. It wanted to be used, to unlock that door in the stockroom. But what lay beyond? Truth or a trap? I paced the aisles, trying to think. The store watched me, its awareness pressing against my mind like a physical weight. It knew I was planning to escape, and it was amused. It had seen this before, had watched others try and fail. What made me think I would be any different? But I had something the others might not have had, a reason beyond myself. Sean needed me. I couldn't fail him, couldn't leave him alone in the world, and I couldn't let this place take his soul. The key whispered again, louder now, almost forming words. Use me. Unlock. Freedom. I shook my head, trying to clear it. The key was part of the trap. I was sure of it. Using it would only bind me more tightly to this place. But what other option did I have? As I debated, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A small symbol carved into the counter, partially hidden by the register. It matched one of the symbols on the store's sign and on the key. I traced it with my finger, and a jolt of electricity shot up my arm. Suddenly, I understood. The symbols weren't just decoration. They were a language, a binding. The store used them to mark its territory, its possessions, and now it was marking me. The mark on my arm, where the presence had touched me during the 2/22 freeze-it, wasn't just a burn. It was a brand, the beginning of my binding to this place. If I stayed until 5 a.m., the binding would be complete. I would belong to Death's Market, just as Elias had, just as all the others had. But there had to be a way out. Elias had known enough to leave a warning. Had he escaped? Or had he simply passed the curse to the next desperate soul who wandered in? The key burned hotter, demanding attention. The door in the stockroom called to me, a siren song I could barely resist. What if the truth behind it was the way out? What if Elias had been wrong? I found myself moving toward the stockroom again, drawn by a compulsion stronger than fear. The door waited, ancient and patient. The key in my pocket felt like it was about to burn through the fabric. With trembling fingers, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key. It glowed faintly in the dim light. The symbols etched into its surface, shifting and changing as I watched. The keyhole in the door seemed to widen slightly, eagerly awaiting its mate. I raised the key, my hand shaking. Everything in me screamed that this was wrong, that I was about to make a terrible mistake. But the compulsion was too strong, the need to know too great. Just as the key was about to slide into the lock, a sound from the front of the store broke the spell, the jingling of the door. A customer at this hour? I shoved the key back into my pocket and hurried to the front, relief and dread warring within me. I had been saved from whatever lay behind that door, but now I faced another of the store's spirits. But as I reached the front, I realized this was something new, something worse. The clock read 4:20 a.m. Dawn was approaching, and with it, my last chance to escape. But first, I had to face whatever had just entered Death's Market, and hope I survived the encounter. The walls pulsed around me, faster now, like a heart racing in anticipation. The lights flickered in patterns that made my eyes water, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I could hear the key whispering, angry at being denied, promising that soon, very soon, I would use it. And God help me, part of me wanted to. The door jingled at exactly 4:20 a.m. I froze, my hand still hovering near my pocket, where the key burned against my thigh. The stockroom door would have to wait. A man in a pristine suit stood in the entrance, his posture unnaturally perfect. Unlike the other customers, he didn't glide or shuffle. He simply existed, as if he'd materialized rather than entered. His face was a perfect mask of calm, expressionless, yet somehow smiling. I recognized the look immediately. It was the same emptiness I'd seen in Mr. Grimm's eyes. "You're almost done, Alex," he said, his voice echoing inside my skull rather than through the air. "Don't ruin it now." I clutched Elias's note in my pocket, the paper now damp with sweat. According to the smudged rule and Elias's warning, I needed to escape before 5 a.m., or I'd never leave. But how? The doors had refused to open earlier, and now this envoy blocked my path. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The man's smile widened a fraction, revealing teeth too white, too perfect. "The store knows your thoughts, Alex. It knows you've read Elias's pathetic warning. It knows you're planning to leave." He took a step forward, and the lights pulsed in rhythm with his movement. "But you won't. None of them ever do. Not really." "I'm not staying," I said, my voice stronger now, fueled by desperation. "This place won't take me or Sean. I'm done." The man laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You were done the moment you walked through that door, the moment you accepted the key. The key in my pocket flared hot, as if responding to his words. I winced, fighting the urge to pull it out. "The store chose you carefully, Alex," the envoy continued, taking another step forward. "Your desperation, your love for your brother, such perfect leverage." He was only a few feet away now, close enough that I should have felt his breath, but there was nothing, no warmth, no movement of air, just a void where a person should be. I needed a distraction. My eyes darted around, landing on a display of canned goods stacked in a pyramid near the entrance. Without thinking, I lunged forward and shoved it with all my strength. The cans crashed to the floor with a cacophony of metallic thuds, rolling in all directions. The envoy turned, momentarily distracted by the noise. I seized my chance and sprinted for the door. To my surprise, it opened easily, as if it had never been locked at all. I burst into the cold night air, gulping it down like a drowning man. My car sat where I'd left it, looking impossibly normal in this nightmare. I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking so badly I could barely get them into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I slammed the car into reverse, tires squealing as I backed out of the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I could see the envoy standing in the doorway of the store, watching me go. He wasn't pursuing, wasn't even moving, just watching with that same empty smile. I sped down the deserted road, putting as much distance between myself and Death's Market as possible. My heart hammered in my chest, and sweat soaked through my shirt despite the cold. The key in my pocket had cooled somewhat, but I could still feel its presence, a weight against my thigh. As I drove, I tried to make sense of what had happened. The store, the spirits, the rules. It was all real. Terrifyingly, impossibly real. And somehow, I had escaped. Or had I? My phone buzzed in the cup holder, startling me so badly I nearly drove off the road. I grabbed it, expecting Mrs. Winters with news about Sean. Instead, the screen showed a text from an unknown number. "You belong to us." Before I could process this, another text came through. "Sean's next." And then a photo Sean in his bed, sleeping peacefully, tubes running from his arms. But there was something else in the picture, a dark shape looming over him, indistinct but unmistakably there. The phone rang, the screen lighting up with yet another unknown number. My hands trembling, I answered. "Return," hissed Mr. Grimm's voice, "or your brother's soul is ours." The call ended abruptly, leaving me in silence broken only by the hum of the engine and my ragged breathing. I pulled over to the side of the road, my vision blurring with tears. The key in my pocket burned again, hotter than before, as if mocking me. I had thought I was free, but the store had merely extended its reach. It had found my weakness, Sean, and was exploiting it mercilessly. I can't let them hurt him. One more hour, I'll finish, then find a way out. I turned the car around, driving back toward the store with a heavy heart. The neon sign came into view, those jagged symbols now clearly spelling damnation to my eyes. The store waited, patient as the grave, knowing I would return. The envoy was gone when I pulled into the parking lot, but the door opened for me automatically, welcoming me back. The fallen cans had been restacked into a perfect pyramid, as if my desperate escape attempt had never happened. The store felt different now, satisfied, smug. The walls pulsed slower, more relaxed. The lights hummed a gentle tune, almost soothing. It had won, and it knew it. I checked the time. 4:45 a.m., 15 minutes until the deadline. If I could just follow the rules until 5:30 a.m., when my shift officially ended, maybe Sean would be safe. Maybe we both would. I moved through the aisles, straightening products that didn't need straightening, wiping surfaces that were already spotless. The key in my pocket had cooled again, but its weight remained, a constant reminder of my bondage. At 4:55 a.m., the door jingled. I looked up, expecting the envoy or Mr. Grimm, but it was the eyeless woman again, still holding her apple. "You returned," she said, her voice like rustling leaves. They always do. I had no choice, I replied, my voice hollow. She tilted her head, the smooth skin where her eyes should have been somehow focusing on me. There is always a choice, Alex. Elias made his. Now you've made yours. Before I could ask what she meant, she turned and walked away, disappearing into aisle 9. I didn't follow. The clock ticked over to 5 a.m. I held my breath, waiting for something to happen. Some transformation. Some claiming. But there was nothing. Just the steady pulse of the lights and the hum of the coolers. Had I misunderstood? Was the deadline not what I thought? The next 30 minutes crawled by, each second stretching into eternity. I continued my mindless tasks, watching the clock with desperate intensity. 5:15 a.m., 5:25 a.m., 5:29 a.m., and then, finally, 5:30 a.m. Sunlight spilled through the windows, golden and warm, banishing the shadows that had lurked in the corners. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, the walls stopped their pulsing, and the lights returned to a steady, normal glow. The door opened, and Mr. Grimm stepped in, looking exactly as he had when I'd first arrived. "Your shift is over, Alex," he said, his voice normal now, no longer the hissing whisper from the phone. "You may go." I didn't wait for him to change his mind. I hurried out to my car, the morning air cool and sweet against my face. The key in my pocket had gone completely cold, just a piece of metal now. As I drove home, the events of the night seemed to recede, like a nightmare fading in the light of day. Had it all been real? The spirits, the rules, the curse? Or had my exhausted, worried mind conjured it all from shadows and stress? But the key in my pocket was real, and the mark on my arm where the presence had touched me, that was real too. 5 fingerprints burned into my skin. I pulled up to my apartment building just as Mrs. Winters was leaving. She smiled when she saw me, relief evident in her tired eyes. "He had a good night," she said, patting my arm. "Slept straight through. I'll see you tomorrow?" I nodded, too exhausted to speak. She squeezed my shoulder and left, her car pulling away from the curb with a gentle purr. Inside, the apartment was quiet, sunlight filtering through the blinds to cast striped shadows across the floor. I moved to Sean's room, pushing the door open gently. He lay in his bed, breathing steadily, the machines monitoring his vitals beeping in a reassuring rhythm. He looked peaceful, untouched by the horrors I'd experienced. I collapsed into the chair beside his bed, relief washing over me in waves. "We're free," I whispered, taking his hand in mine. "It's over. Sean's okay. We're safe now." I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, Sean was stirring, his eyes fluttering open. He smiled when he saw me, a faint, tired smile that nonetheless lit up his too pale face. "How was work?" he asked, his voice weak but clear. I squeezed his hand, fighting back tears. "It was different, but I'm not going back. Never again." Sean's smile twisted then, becoming something else. Something that didn't belong on his face. His eyes, normally soft and kind, glinted with a hardness I recognized from Mr. Grimm. "You don't get it, Alex," he whispered, his voice layered with another's, deeper and older. "Once you're theirs forever." I jerked back, horror washing over me in a cold wave. The key in my pocket pulsed suddenly, burning hot against my thigh. The room darkened, shadows stretching from the corners despite the sunlight outside. My phone lit up with a text. "See you at 10:30. I stared at Sean, at the brother I'd sacrificed everything to save, unsure if he was still human or if he'd become a vessel for the store's will. His smile remained fixed, unnatural, his eyes glinting with that same emptiness I'd seen in Mr. Grimm and his envoy. The air grew heavy, pressing down on me like a physical weight. And from somewhere far away, I heard a faint jingle, like the door of a store opening. "Sean, is that you? Or did I bring the store home? God, what have I done?" The key in my pocket burned hotter, searing through the fabric of my jeans. When I reached down to touch it, I found it had somehow fused to my skin, the metal melding with my flesh in a grotesque union. I tried to pull it away, but it was part of me now, inseparable. Sean, or whatever wore his face, watched me with that terrible smile. "The night shift is never over, Alex," he said, his voice still that unsettling blend of his own and something older, darker. "It just moves locations." Outside, the sun continued to shine, birds sang, and people went about their normal lives. But in our apartment, shadows deepened, and the air smelled faintly of ozone. The walls seemed to pulse, ever so slightly, like a heartbeat. And I knew, with a certainty that hollowed me out, that I hadn't escaped at all. I had merely brought Death's Market home with me. The key, now part of my flesh, would ensure I returned tonight, and tomorrow night, and every night after that, an eternal shift in a store that fed on despair and bound souls to its service. I looked at Sean, searching for any sign of my brother beneath that terrible smile. There was nothing, just the empty gaze of a vessel, a puppet for the store's will. "I'll find a way to free you," I promised, though I knew it was likely futile. "I'll find a way to break this curse." Sean's smile widened, revealing too many teeth. "There is no breaking it, Alex. There is only service, eternal service." The jingle sounded again, closer now, as if the store's door had opened just outside our apartment. The shadows stretched further, reaching for me with grasping fingers, and I knew that when night fell, I would return to Death's Market. Not because I was forced, but because it had claimed me so completely that I would want to return. The key fused to my flesh was just a symbol of a deeper binding one that had taken root in my soul. The store had won. It had always been going to win. From the moment I'd seen that job listing, my fate had been sealed. As the shadows engulfed me, I closed my eyes, surrendering to the inevitable. The night shift would begin again at 10:30 p.m., and I would be there, ready to serve. Death's Market had claimed another soul, and this time it had taken two for the price of one.